On Friday, September 5th, President Donald Trump is expected to sign an executive order that will rename the Department of Defense to the Department of War. According to a White House official, the plan is designed to leave the president's personal stamp on America's largest institution while reshaping how the country's military identity is understood both at home and abroad. The order would not stop at renaming the Pentagon. It would also allow senior leaders to adopt new titles. Secretary Pete Hegseth would no longer be known as Secretary of Defense, but instead as Secretary of War. His deputies and aides would assume parallel designations. These titles, once retired in the aftermath of World War II, could soon be revived in official correspondence, on public documents, and in the words of America's top officials when they speak on the world stage. Supporters argue this is more than a cosmetic change. They call it a return to historical roots, a re-embrace of honesty about the true purpose of the armed forces. For the first 160 years of its existence, the United States called this institution the Department of War. From the time of George Washington until 1947, the nation was led by a Secretary of War. That name carried America through the Civil War, the Spanish-American War, World War I, and World War II. Only in the post-war years, when the United States took on the burden of global stability and nuclear deterrence, did the name change to the Department of Defense. Supporters insist Trump's decision restores tradition and clarity. Critics, however, warn that the consequences could be far more than symbolic. They point out that names matter in diplomacy. The use of the word war could reinforce fears that the United States is embracing a more aggressive posture. At a time when alliances are strained and global tensions are high, they say this could alienate allies and embolden rivals. One senior European diplomat put it plainly, this is not simply a semantic shift. Words matter in diplomacy, and this word will not be lost on the world. The debate comes down to interpretation. To supporters, defense has become a vague and sanitized term. They argue it obscures what soldiers actually do. The military does not exist to defend abstract ideas, but to prepare for war and to fight if necessary. They see Trump's move as refreshing honesty. One official close to the president described his thinking in blunt language, recalling his private words. Defense sounds weak. War is what we prepare for, and it's what we must win if necessary. To critics, however, this is dangerous nostalgia. They argue the decision undermines decades of work to frame America as a stabilizing force rather than a belligerent power. They fear it risks reviving Cold War-style perceptions and feeding the propaganda machines of adversaries. In Moscow, Beijing and Tehran, officials are expected to seize on this shift to validate their own narratives of American militarism. Inside the United States, the reaction has predictably split along partisan lines. Many Republicans cheered the plan, praising it as bold, historic, and unflinchingly honest. Some called it a morale boost for the troops. One senator remarked that the troops know what their job is. They're not defending abstract concepts, they're training for war. This title tells it like it is. Democrats, by contrast, denounced the move as reckless and irresponsible. Several members of the House Armed Services Committee promised hearings and investigations. Activists warned that normalizing the language of war risks entrenching a culture of permanent conflict. Anti-war groups accused the president of glorifying militarism at a time when the country is still grappling with the legacy of Iraq and Afghanistan. Historians emphasize the weight of the decision. The Department of War was not renamed lightly in 1947. President Truman and his advisors wanted the United States to project stability in the nuclear age. Defense was meant to symbolize protection, deterrence, and cooperation. Restoring the old name would not change military operations, but it would change how those operations are framed in the eyes of the world. Internationally, the implications ripple outward. NATO allies, already uneasy about Trump's sharp rhetoric on defense spending, may view the change as confirmation of a more confrontational America. Asian partners like Japan and South Korea, who rely on US commitments for security, may wonder what message a Department of War sends about Washington's role in the Pacific. For adversaries like Russia and China, the propaganda opportunity is obvious. Both nations already accuse Washington of seeking dominance through force. With this renaming, they will have an easy soundbite. America itself calls its military arm the Department of War. For the American public, reaction has been divided and intense. Social media erupted with hashtags like Department of War and War Not Defense. Some praised the move as common sense, saying the government should call it what it is. Others mocked it as theatrical branding, while still others warned it risks glorifying conflict. The debate revealed the deep divisions over how Americans see their military as a protective shield or as a weapon of war. Observers note that this decision fits a broader pattern in Trump's presidency: bold gestures designed to dominate headlines. From his handling of NATO to his tariff battles, Trump has often favored dramatic steps that force allies, critics, and the public to react on his terms. Renaming the Pentagon is another example. It guarantees attention, stirs controversy, and cements his image as a president unafraid to upend long-standing traditions. Yet the stakes here are higher than most symbolic gestures. For more than 70 years, the Department of Defense has been a cornerstone of American identity. It has overseen wars in Korea, Vietnam, the Middle East, and countless operations around the globe. Through all of this, it carried the title of Defense, a name that, at least on paper, framed the United States as cautious, restrained, and prepared to act only when necessary. If Trump signs the order, that framing will change overnight. The Secretary of War will speak from the Pentagon podium. The Department of War will issue press releases and reports. Military documents, budgets, and official statements will carry a name not seen since the mid-20th century. In reality, little will change operationally. Soldiers will still deploy, commanders will still plan, and budgets will still flow. But in perception, in politics, and in diplomacy, everything will feel different. The question is what message this sends. To supporters, it says America is strong, unapologetic, and grounded in tradition. To critics, it says America is belligerent, reckless, and blind to the value of words. The truth may lie somewhere in between, but the world will interpret the message according to its own biases. As the world waits for Trump's signature, one thing is certain. This decision ensures September 5th, 2025 will be remembered as a turning point in America's defense identity. Whether it is remembered as a bold return to honesty or as a reckless provocation is a debate that will continue for years to come. In the end, this is not only about renaming a building or a bureaucracy, it is about how a nation sees itself, how it wants to be seen by others, and what it chooses to project to the world. The Department of Defense has defined America's role as a global power for more than 70 years. The Department of War, if revived, will carry a very different weight. For now, the world watches, allies hold their breath, and adversaries sharpen their narratives. President Trump has never been afraid of bold moves. This one may prove to be among the boldest of all.